Hello, everybody. Welcome. Very excited. My name is Jeremy Francesi. Welcome to First Floor Conversations, episode 70. We're joined by Adrian Martinsa, founder of Technology for the Future. Before I introduce Adrian and we dive in, I just want to say welcome back. If you're on a video, thank you for stopping by. If you're tuned in audio, welcome. I hope you liked the new intro. Shout out to Steph, who really helped drive the composition and kind of building that out. But the last 6-7 months has really been head down building the business. And I am super excited to get back up and running with the podcast. And really, this is, one of my favorite hours of the week because, we get to have conversations with people doing amazing things and understand how they did it, how they're continuing to do it, and learn how they're doing it in a sustainable way, right? It's getting the big picture and getting into the specifics of, how can we take action? How can we get involved and understanding what makes these things move? And I think Adrian is somebody that I've been following as a fan from afar for a couple of years now. I think that, every time you look at the news and social, there's new technology, there's new iPhones, there's new iPads and watches and gadgets and wearables. And, we're so focused on the next thing that I think sometimes we do forget that there's a community of people that don't even have the latest thing. And the further and further these updates go, the bigger the gap is. And early on, I think it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even more than that, I started to see what you were doing with Technology for the Future. And I was just so impressed by how you were finding these communities around the country and potentially globally. We'll talk a little bit more, and really separating the buzz of the sexy gadgets and understanding that there's people that need help getting access to these resources to be able to dream and in motion and take a little more control. And so, Adrian, welcome to the show. Look, let's get people up to speed a little bit on the basics, right? First off, you're tuning in from Montreal, which is cool. Where are you usually based out of when you are in the States?
In High Point, North Carolina.
North Carolina, gotcha. And so
from Slovakia, so I'm from
gotcha.
In Canada and the U.S.
Gotcha. Understood. So let's build a little bit of the foundation for everybody, and then we'll dive into things. Look, Adrian started Technology for the Future in 2016, I think it was, right? Mm-hmm. And nonprofit focused on really delivering technology resources and really infrastructure to underprivileged communities that don't have access to technology and these resources to do what a lot of us, I think, take for granted, the basic things like getting access to internet, being able to work on a laptop. And what I'd love to do here is really start from the early stage a little bit of, before you started Technology for the Future in 2016 and started really going into service mode of really connecting with these communities. What was Adrian up to before that part? What I know you have another technology company. Why don't you get us up to speed a little bit on kind of where the journey started, so to speak?
So me with tech, the beginning was essentially because I spent especially the last 2 months really thinking about how did all of this start for me. And I realized that my first interaction with diving into the technology realm was when my family came to this continent when we originally moved to Canada, and all of a sudden we went from having literally everything in Slovakia to being in a new economy, a new society where so much of an individual's as well as a company's success, because my family is an entrepreneur family, was dependent on tech. So all of a sudden we went from having freedom to all of a sudden being in a new country, no language, and losing the freedom of just being able to create or do whatever because it was all dependent on some form of access, whether that was finding the resources you needed or being able to reach out to people. Technology all of a sudden entered my life as being a gateway to my own freedom and a freedom that I no longer had. So I built my relationship essentially like entering this war with tech to give my own family the tools that they couldn't find, to give them to like help restore the freedom my family once had. Now that we moved, that we wasn't the same anymore. And that kind of led into me, but on the side of my father's jewelry businesses, doing tech stuff from surveillance to websites to marketing, pretty much anything that had to do with the computer I did. And that was since I was a teenager. So by the age of 13, I had my own computer business on the side. And then in 2011, which is by that time we were in North Carolina. It it started flourishing more so like towards the end of high school, because I started finding computers all over the country from different auctions or businesses and refurbishing them and getting them to other people as cheap as possible. Because to me at that time, it wasn't about making money. My relationship with tech was the same as it was with my family. Like I just wanted to protect someone else's freedom and give them that, without freedom, like what do you lose like you lose hope, and tech is a huge aspect of us having a sense of freedom in your life.
Can you timestamp that for us? How old were you when your family left? You said Slovakia?
So it was 1999. So like the year 2000, we came to Canada.
What caused, what drove the movement?
My family, so even though we were like, in my mind, we were like, and my dad had a bunch of jewelry stores and like we were really well off, but he sacrificed and sold literally everything just because the way my parents said it is the level of freedom and power of choice just did not exist. So in a lot of those, like back then, in a lot of those Slavic countries, you literally had to like go to war for your success, like essentially, right? There's a lot of things behind the scenes that go on in countries like that where, the freedom and equality isn't the same as, let's say, in America. So they had their sights set for me and my sister Miriam to be able to live a life where we can freely pursue our success without any fear that there's someone that might not want us to be successful. In countries where you have that large divide between rich and poor, there's a lot of different kinds of fears than there are in countries that have a larger middle class.
Right. Preservation is more top of mind than anything. Yeah. Right. It's I interviewed a gentleman, Mehdi Tabiliazar. He's a chief investment officer now. He grew up in Iran. And, one of the things we talked a lot about growing up in that environment was the idea of preservation. It was, scarcity was always top of mind. And it wasn't about capital and money, but it was about resources. It was the idea of what we have today doesn't mean we're going to have it tomorrow unless we safeguard it and we manage it appropriately. Yeah. So Adrian, your family went from Slovakia to Canada. And then you started to realize that technology was an opportunity to take a little more control, right? If you hadn't looked at technology as the out, what was the alternative? Knowing right now you run AM Technologies as a company, and Technology for the Future, which is the charitable arm of that organization. And for those listening and watching, I mean, you've given out thousands of laptops to communities, right? I mean, maybe
20,000 now too.
20,000 laptops. I mean, that's 20,000 individual lives that have been fundamentally changed because they now have a resource that connects them to the world, right? When Bezos and Richard Branson talked about going up, to space, however you want to classify where they ended up. They talk about it being a borderless view, right? You start to get rid of the fact that there's state lines, county lines, lines in the sand, and you realize that it's just one big community. And technology, in many ways, creates that effect because music does a great job where they sound like they're from Atlanta, but they're from a suburb in New Jersey, right? And technology, it blurs the lines from neighbor to community to stranger, right? And so 20,000 laptops is incredible. But if you hadn't gone the route of computers, technology, that's the way I can take control of getting my family what they need. Did you have an alternative? Did you have a fork in the road of technology or this other thing?
I don't think there is one. Like what? Right? I mean, like what job is there, or what pathway to freedom exists where technology is not involved?
But I think that's even the point, right? When we think about these communities that don't have the basic resources of internet, a phone, a laptop, a Word document, right? They're using a notebook to do everything. Like you start to think about storing information and access to information, the ability to learn on demand, right? We think about going to college and not having the ability to pay for textbooks. It's like, textbooks is a small sliver of an example with the bigger idea of access to information, right? To store knowledge and create a point of view, right? And to be able to contribute. There really isn't anything like technology that levels the playing field, right? You can't work hard. Well, I mean, you can build without it, but it's a significant disadvantage. So
as human. Like I think humanity on one way or another is personifying their own desire, their own energy. So technology is a manifestation to me of the fact that humanity is already interconnected, that we are united. We're just trying to get there through tech, but not realizing that we also have to treat it that way, and technology has to treat us that way. It has to evolve the same way our human soul would.
It's a relationship, not a product. So you get to the point where you start to have a semblance of, I use the word control. I don't know if that's the right phrasing for what we're doing here, but you start to have I think a vehicle is a better way to frame it, right? You start helping people with computers, with websites, with marketing. It's the vehicle for you to find productivity and impact in a more immediate and exchange of value, rather than it feeling like you're on the treadmill. It creates momentum, right? What happened next? Like when you started to find success, was it, to your point, it wasn't monetary success, but when did you start to realize that this was more than a vehicle, but a path, or I don't know if you would call it a calling potentially? Like how did that evolve from 2000 through the early 2000s?
I think I mean, I feel like with the initial experience, because I lost in my mind and even my family, I mean, I could see it. Like we lost so much freedom that it was that feeling of like that victorious liberation, right? All of a sudden being let go, that drove it. So anytime I could get my hands on anything that I already experienced, so like I experienced the liberation of having a computer. I experienced the liberation of walking into a company and them thinking a surveillance system, for example, costs like $3,000. And I was like, no, like I'll get you guys one set up for $800 because it took me like 3 hours to do. And I just got a system for it. Like that made, like seeing other people's potential grow and seeing them be liberated drove me because I related to it so heavily. I didn't care about the money. I just cared about seeing that around me because my family just gave up, like sacrificed everything for that form of liberation. And if I'm in a country that's now my home, if I don't see that same degree of liberation all around me, the minimum I can do is fight for it because all people deserve it. So if literally my entire life was sacrificed, right, for this better place, and in that place I see lack of liberation in others, then I'm going to devote my life to fighting for that freedom because what else is there?
Can you unpack the idea behind liberation? I think the way you're framing it may be different than how other people, I think other people think about liberation as the idea of, unshackling the chains, right?
Literally like that. I mean, if I take your computer, your phone, are you not in like a virtual prison essentially? Like, what are you going to go do? If somebody doesn't bring you food and money to buy food, like, do you even have a way to make money, to get a job, to participate as a citizen, right? When you go to prison, you essentially are punished and taken away from, like, your choice of participation is removed. So my question to people generally is, can you participate if you don't have adequate access to technology in the 21st century?
Right.
Especially now. Like that was a mission that was in my mind years ago before COVID. Right. And it was in the behind the scenes with community leaders and especially schools, like they understood it. They understood that, if these kids or families, like it doesn't matter what age you are, but if you can't harness tech, like what are your job opportunities? What are your potential, like what are your choices to utilize the freedom you have, that America stands for? Like it's not as vast as you might think, because like I personally wouldn't know how to be successful without tech or without access to the internet, right?
And the way you describe it, participation is perfectly framed. And at the end of the day, the saying that half of life is showing up, a lot of people don't have the ability because they can't participate. Yeah. They don't have the internet. They don't have their phone. They don't have a laptop. We're so focused on getting the iPhone 18 that you forget that some people don't have a smartphone. They don't have anything. Right.
And I didn't know this until I was in America because, I mean, I always feel weird talking about it because it somewhat, like it does relate to race, but I came from a country where it was pretty much all white people, right? And then Canada was a little bit different. And then I came here and I started doing technology. And I started noticing that, like, if there isn't money in areas, there's more poverty, and then there's also less technology. And as I started doing this, I noticed that primarily the communities I was serving that didn't have access to this market were predominantly Black. And I didn't, like, that's when it hit me what technology can cause, right? Because it creates such a vast divide of opportunity. And then as I was going through it, through all these schools, I came to understand that there's also the third grade literacy scores. So based on state testing, all these kids, third grade literacy scores are the prison pipeline, which means that if you don't perform at a high enough level in your reading scores, then they literally assign, like, I guess, budgets or funding towards prisons. So you're already on the track of
give up.
Assume that you're not going to be able to participate sufficiently in society to actually stay out of trouble, because you don't have, like, what economy are you going to be a part of other than an illegal economy, right? Like, it kind of pushes you into, the wrong space when you don't have access to be successful with something that is legal, like that is allowed or common or whatever. It's just such an interesting.
It's a really interesting observation, and the whether it's correlation, causation, or observation, it's one of those functions of they have to be able to participate. They have to know how to participate, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They need it, having the tool doesn't mean you know how to use it. So we have to figure out how to get them in motion, which we'll talk about. But so when we think through, right, so you arrive in Canada, 2000, you start to see technology as a means of being liberated, more control, more access, the capacity to participate, and the vehicle to perform, building relationships, right? You start to be able to find your way into an economy that does kick back value for value provided, right? Not that everything comes back to money, but in some essence, survival is a part of the conversation. If they see it as a means of creation and survival, then there's more value there, right? But so at what point did you start to see, did you immediately go into the charity side of, like, I'm going to build a 501c3 and start trying to find underprivileged communities and get them what they need? How did things develop from an infrastructure standpoint?
I think the I guess the way I would phrase it is like, I mean, this might be complicated, but I was always around our family business, right? And the way I was raised was that your community and your society, like wherever you are, is your extended family. Because if people, and this is like coming from ideology of like Slovakia being a socialist / post-communist like space, right? So it was important in that country that all people were happy, because the happiness of all people ensured that everyone could be happy for a prolonged period of time. Because even if you live, so anywhere you call home, if there's people who are struggling or suffering or unhappy, it'll eventually catch up to you. So my relationship with my own company wasn't as like, and that's where I was trying to make the segue, was a family business, but it was for family, right? It was for purpose. So I always approached everything through need. So like whether I came to that company or that customer who walked in, it doesn't matter. I was like, what do you need? Okay, so you need this, like I mentioned, the solution with the surveillance system, or they come in because they need a computer for their kid or whatever. Like, oh, we only have $100. Like, these computers run $250, and I know that, right here, have it for 100. I don't care, right? Because if it fit into my budget, and even if I gave up all of my profit that I could have had, like, I didn't care, because it was like, that's what you would do for family, right? You would make your family at the very minimum, like you'd either give it to them for free if you could afford it, or at the minimum, you just be like, please at least cover my costs.
Right. Or you take a small loss and find a way to get it back, because getting them to be able to participate is more valuable. Like, you trust yourself to cover the $150 delta relative to like you finding the 150 to cover the loss is so much easier than getting them the ability to participate.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I approached my business. And one day there was this lady, and we're still great friends. She was one of my customers. Her name was Christine Riles. And in the city where we had moved in the US, Kernersville, North Carolina, she came into my store and she was just like, Adrian, you run your business like a nonprofit. Like, why don't you start one? Like, and then all these people you're helping already, you can actually find people who also have money, who value how you do business, who see that you can, stretch their dollar and create a larger impact. Then you can partner with them and form a support system for all the other people, families that wouldn't have access to your resources, even though they are affordable. So that kind of segued me towards creating technology for the future, because I just wanted to take all the stuff I had, which I was, doing what I was doing with it, helping people, and create the capability even further.
How quickly after, also amazing customer, to be honest, that's fantastic. How quickly after that conversation, that recommendation took place, did you create technology for the future and then start to, because you manage both of them still, correct? It's not you manage AM Technologies, which is a for-profit entity that supports businesses and people for technology. And then you have technology for the future, correct?
Yeah. And I like to call it, I'm not trying to correct you, but I like to call it for purpose. Kind of like Tom's shoes, right?
Understood. Social enterprise.
A for-purpose entity, and technology for the future is the giving arm where we can bring together all the connections and people I have.
Got it. Got it. And also, please correct again. Like I said, I wanted to connect to learn more and amplify a little bit, but that's also makes perfect sense. So back to the original point. How quickly after that dialogue took place did you start the actual nonprofit and start to get in motion? I feel like that sounds like kind of a tipping point where you realize no, I can build this in an intentional way, get kind of a community behind it that's already thinking about these things. How was that progression?
Extremely slow, because people didn't see it. Right, you have to understand so you have to go back in time to then, right? Right now, everyone actually sees what I've been literally battling for 3 years, right? And actually, my sister just did an interview and she literally was brought to tears with how much we asked for help and how much help we got, right? And I'm not complaining, I understand. But right now, the fear of fear motivates choices, right? Right now, the fear of the situation with COVID outweighs the fear of a computer.
Understood. Right? There's only so much appetite for change.
Exactly. And back then, the biggest fear was whether, so the people in the markets, well, the markets that don't exist, but the people who need assistance and technology the most are generally only accessible because they're out of the marketplace, essentially, right? Through communities and or school, community organizations and or schools. And as soon as you come to that through whether it's bureaucracy or a process or whatever, not only do you have a process, but now you have fear. Fear of liability for the computer, fear of liability, what if a kid goes on something, fear of blah, 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 blah. There's all these problems that all of a sudden come up that actually come first. It's not about and that used to drive me literally insane. I would get pissed in meetings sometimes because I'm why are your guys, why are your minds even going to that? I would never say no to a child having what they need. I just figure out what my liabilities are, while I'm helping them. Not even before, every day is a day lost. You wouldn't do that to your own child. Why would you do it to children in the community or families in the, you would not do that to family, right? So, and I've always approached it that way. I understand there has to be a process, but for true change to occur, it also has to be a process that's equally reasonable as one that would exist with your own family members, right? If we actually want to have happiness as a humanity, we have to somehow create reason that upholds family and the way we would relate to our own children. And then we'll actually have change, which is also why like I am willing to provide this computer for like during COVID for $70 instead of me going and selling it for 200. And I could have easily, right? Because for family, I'll do that first before, and I don't even have to think about it. I don't need to have a process.
Right.
So I'm just gonna go do it. But that is essential for like.
When you said that people didn't see it, was it that they didn't believe that there was a significant amount of people lacking the resources, or they didn't see it as in, I get it's a problem, I just don't see how you're going to solve it? Like we're going to shift gears in a minute to just general lack of awareness of, I mean, it's tens of millions of people out of the to your point, the capacity to participate, right? Yeah. When we're talking about the seat, like technology today is a seat at the table to be a contributing member of society in many ways, right? The global community.
Well, I think the best way to sum it up situationally, and I think this goes for everything, is an example. Like I'll talk to a district, for example, and this is a district example, but
like a school district.
Yeah, and it's going to be, but you can extrapolate that to a family, to anyone, right? The district doesn't have money for enough computers. I'll bring them in, hypothetically, right? Or they got a grant, like before they even talk to me. They're one-to-one, right? 3 years pass, because usually tech, like they all cycle through it within 4 years. There's an average like 15% fallout rate, things getting damaged, broken, blah, blah, blah. And 4 years pass. And during that process as well, all of a sudden they can't sustain it, right? Like from fixing it to internet. Like I went to a school in Guilford County. The reason that I was able to provide 10,000 kids there with free computers is because I went to a meeting where I wanted to donate 300 computers to the school, and they refused to take them because they couldn't, because apparently they didn't have good enough Wi-Fi, right? And me as I pride myself on knowing tech. They had wireless, more than sufficient for what they would have done for utilizing the tech and all these things, right? But one person in tech, in their tech department or whatever the hell, said they need to put in $10,000 worth of extra like access points. I was like, you guys have one in every other classroom. Like you don't need to go and put 5G in every single class.
Right.
Like why? It goes through one wall.
Right.
You know, like it just pissed me off. And like and the kids couldn't have it. Right? Because in our system there's like 3 or 4 tech people. And now let's say you're the boss. Like who are you gonna, like you can't trust me over your employee.
Of course.
Right? Like you literally can't.
But why are these gatekeepers are they trying, like, here's how I look at this, right? And in my mind, it's a no-brainer. Again, why I wanted to talk, why I've been like from afar, like this is so smart, right? And just like, it's a no-brainer to me, right? It's no different than in an environment when when the humans started to learn how to write, right? We started to understand how to document that technology of writing things, whether it's calligraphy or any form of technology that allowed us to document ideas, thoughts, and stories. That changed the trajectory of history, right? And when that went online and we started to change how we communicated, like the barrier to entry is significant at this point if you don't have access to technology and a computer. But now people are playing a gatekeeper, right? It's like you're making decisions on behalf of a body of people when it seems, are they looking to say no? I just don't understand why. Like, and you're always looking to say yes. I'm always trying to find a way to yes. Yeah. It makes, it sounds like if there's
to be rock, like see, and that's the thing, because we don't like I tried for 3 years, never quit. That's why I donated a ton of stuff myself, like funded most of it, even whatever. Like the point is that like I've realized several things. One is that a bureaucracy gets funding backwards. So you cannot create efficiency. Like I've actually had behind the scenes conversations with board members of schools, right? That called me after I went there and talked to the board and about Adrian. Like you're talking about creating efficiency. You're literally not going to pass it through. Like you're not going to. It means people are going to lose jobs because they have to keep up the spending. They have to keep up this inefficient system because otherwise they won't get more funds. I was like, holy shit. Like I remember learning about that in school, how government funding is literally backwards.
Yeah.
You know? And so between that and then having like 5 or 6 people, right? Because you can only make the decision that you're supposed to make, right? Like especially in any public entity. You know, if you're talking about like charters, usually they're, you know, like charters we've been able to help charter schools and private schools like this. Any public institution, it's been literally 1,000 times harder, which is what eventually drove me into just doing this thing publicly and creating the Open Doors Challenge and just getting kids to submit videos to us directly. Like, what's your dream? Like, think a little bit of how you're going to do that, like achieve it through tech. As long as you have that vision in your mind, that's great. You've done the first step. Let me get you a computer and now figure out the rest, you know? So,
you're mobilizing the community. Is that where Dreamforce came to be?
Yeah. So Open Doors Challenge kind of transformed into the Dreamforce because the tech is out there, is just it's not even for change, like for effective choices to be available. It's about people coming together and enabling those choices, to opening doors to those choices, because gatekeepers don't need to exist for them.
Exactly.
You know, if we have a donor that has enough money to help cover because I don't have that kind of money to cover the computers, I can easily create a management system outside of schools, right, to make sure all these families and students have the computers that they need, as well as access to all their stuff. But that kind of, you know, organization, that kind of coming together of people had even more resistance, like literally 10 times more resistance than even like those kinds of people that could create the change that whether it was community foundations or people who had money, like it was always like everyone is so used to doing things through the bureaucracy, right, that forgotten that change can occur outside of it. And that's the only thing I think about, because when I came from Slovakia, you know, like coming from a post-socialist communist country, like change did not occur, right, unless it happened outside of that system.
Of course.
You know, like people literally had to come together and create the change alone because there was no other pathway. And then I'm here in America, the land of freedom, and all of a sudden I'm like, why don't people, like, guys, like, let's just do it together. Like, why do we need all this stuff?
We don't need permission.
Yeah. You know, like.
So it's tough to hear, because I can understand. I mean, it's like, say yes. There's no bad reason to give a kid a laptop that doesn't have access to things, unless you instinctively at your core believe people are not inherently good people. You know what I mean? Like that, in my mind, is the only objective way for you to get behind saying no, is if you believe people at heart are not good human beings.
I mean, and those comments do come up.
Of course. So here, I want to, because I want to make sure we get through certain key things, because we recognize the problem, right? There's millions of people that do not have it, and most of this is children. A lot of your focus is kids, right? Yeah. Obviously, there's adults that are underprivileged and under-equipped with the resources they need to be effective as an adult, but a lot of your focus is obviously schools, churches, communities. They're trying to get kids in the next generation equipped with what they need to participate and get involved, right? Not just with the world, but with themselves, right? I think, you know, it gives them a way to participate in exploring who they are and who they want to be and how that impacts society. But how do we go about, for the average people listening to this, right? If you're listening to this on iTunes as a podcast, you probably are fine, right? Because you're listening to it on an iPhone probably, right? If you're listening to this on Spotify, you're probably okay, right? Because you're potentially paying for a streaming service. We're not talking about people that are listening to Spotify, right? We're not talking about people that are casually plugging into iTunes and in between their Netflix sessions, right? We're talking about people that have these kids that they are living a very different life from the average TikTok star, right? We have 12-year-olds that are making $800,000 a year on TikTok, and 2 towns over, they have kids that don't even know of what's happening, right? Yeah. So so once you recognize you're like, we need to help people, how do people understand how big the problem is? Like, I'm curious how many people you'll interact with that just kind of don't believe, like, nah, most people are fine.
But I mean, yeah, yeah. I
Like,
mean,
what are the, I guess the right question is,
invisible.
the right question I'm trying to ask is like, what are the misconceptions that the average everyday person doesn't understand about how a significant percentage of children are growing up in America?
Well, I mean, things have shifted now, right?
Okay.
It used to be like before the pandemic, 25% of households didn't have like active internet connection before all this. And
What's all this? Meaning like since you
like before
started.
the pandemic, before
Okay.
this rush at like fixing the problem, right? But what I think that is even worse that they don't understand, like what people, like I think the biggest problem around tech that people do not see and will not see is that there's layers to the cloud, and those layers of the cloud define your participation. And if you're like, for example, like TikTok is a beautiful example, right? If your exposure to tech is first TikTok and all this like stuff that Steve Jobs used to talk about, like worry about, where if technology is driven by sales and marketing, it'll consume people and like kind of like ruin their potential. Or, I don't know how he phrased it, so I'm using my own words.
Understood.
But in that same essence of the fact that like, how do you get through those barriers, right? Because that consumes a ton of your time and exposure, and find the layers of the cloud and infrastructure that are like positive productivity wise, where you can gain more skills, more capability, more sense of light in your own potential, and then break through to actually using that awareness and creating action and doing something, not just thinking about it, not just imagining it, not just hoping for it, but actually like putting boots on the ground and doing, right? That's so many layers of the clouds, like what I like to call it, that like the cloud shrouds people in darkness and people don't see it. Not only do they not see from the top that like there's darkness where people just aren't a part of the cloud at all, but there's also darkness within it too, because it consumes our time in our mind. And it puts so many things in our minds that it doesn't allow enough time for people to truly see through the cloud and see that their own potential is trapped in it, because they have to be able to create action to be able to take that first step. You know, and action is the hardest thing to take, which again creates kind of like a backward segue into that open doors challenge concept, which was, let's begin our vision and how we see tech through action.
So let's unpack that for those that are listening or watching that don't know what the open doors challenge is, what became of Dreamforce. Talk to us a little bit about what it is, how it works, and you know what the results been a little bit, because it's obviously helped mobilize a lot of the movement that you've been able to use to drive some success.
We're Open Doors Challenge, as a side note, is temporarily on pause right now because we're building a new platform for it. Okay. So soon. But the Open Doors Challenge was it started as a video contest where students and even adults who did not have tech would record a video telling us like who they are, what their dream is, and then how they could envision that dream coming into reality using technology. So we introduced that first conversation of see your future through tech, like manifest it. How can you? Because there is most likely an avenue for you to be able to achieve it.
Right.
And then as long as they did that and took that first step of like faith and shared that dream with others, they would earn a computer from us. We would donate them a computer to now be able to do it. And they would just use phones or their friends' phones, or a teacher would do it. Like people were creative. They found ways to submit it, which now segues to a new product called WOV that we're in the process of piloting, which is just a social platform. It's a little bit different from all this, but
I'm curious on the Dreamforce side and the Open Doors Challenge. Like, do you have an idea of how many videos you've received from people?
So this was again before the pandemic.
Right.
We just got a few hundred because people were extremely, and that's again back to that first problem, was no one trusted it. They're like, this is too good to be true. This must be fake. This must, So there was, so first from the community leaders, they had fear
I
in,
think it's like a scam.
yeah, people thought it was a scam.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
So
there's layer after layer of this.
how do you get around that? Like, how do you get people to believe that you at your heart genuinely are trying to help them because you recognize that if it's not you, somebody's got to do it, right? Like if it's to be, it's up to me kind of deal. It's like somebody's got to help. Like, how do you work around pure, unwavering skepticism, which in reality, if you just, because look, like it may not be sales, but look, 85% of transactions occur between the 5th and 12th engagement between buyers and sellers, right? I can imagine there's some level of similarity in your line of getting involved because of skepticism, uncertainty. We don't have the budget. Oh, it's definitely not going to be only $100 a laptop. You're going to upsell us. And, like it's just a level of disbelief and a lack of confidence that you are coming genuinely open arms saying, I'm here to help. What do you need? Which in another note says a whole heck of a lot about how people perceive business at large when you're in that community, right? When you genuinely are like in a position where you need help, how you view the world of everybody's just out for themselves. Nobody's really coming to genuinely help. And that's a problem, right? That's a whole other conversation. It says a lot about the state of the culture of business and commerce. You touched on it perfectly with the jobs reference around if sales and marketing is what drives innovation, then I was talking to a buddy of mine recently, just got the book Sapiens, talking through like human history and from an anthropology standpoint. Talks and what was talking about with that friend was like, what's the value in boredom? That was the premise of the dialogue around if you're constantly stimulated, TikTok, Instagram, you're just it's almost like, do you have the capacity for free thinking, for allowing thoughts to enter, for you to be a vehicle for creative, what's the value of that? But you need the resources first. But if it's so clouded and that's their interaction, it proves to be challenging. How do you navigate the skepticism? Because if you bail, where I was starting off with the sales references, if you say this is too hard, I'm out of here. Like I don't know you as well as I'd like to, obviously, because we're just getting to know each other. Like I can tell that you're the type of person that understands that if you walk away from that, you're walking away from unlocking a potential future for a body of people. That if there isn't somebody else like Adrian, they're not getting the help they need, even if that one adult is standing in the way as the gatekeeper saying, nope, we don't trust you. Like what happens?
I mean, yeah, this is, yeah. I mean, my approach to everything is pretty, like, I don't know, just the way I do things is different. Even like I used to tell my friends, because they're like, oh, why don't you get investors for your business? I'm like, do you understand what that means? Like, you don't get what that means.
No.
Right? Like, you don't understand that. Like, will I be able to just like sell my stuff for nothing? No.
Right. You don't want to answer to somebody. You want to give and not worry about receiving.
Like, you can't go and have investors, like, they expect profit, right? I'm a for-purpose, like whether it's my for-purpose company or my nonprofit, I'm here to create impact. So right. People, I think, is just, there's so many layers of society that unless people create change themselves, it just doesn't happen. Like, it's not even that, like, it's not possible. It's kind of like, right. Can you go stand in front of Walmart and promote your nonprofit, right? Like, no, because then they're going to get 100 applicants from 100 other nonprofits. So right. And they go and do something freely. No, they don't have that freedom as a big corporation. Right? We as people live in a society where we have ourselves created these kinds of patterns where change is 10 times harder and the skepticism thereof just keeps permeating, right? Like, is that the right word? I don't know, permeating.
Works for me.
I think people just have to see it. Like,
how do we make them see it then? So if 25% pre-pandemic household, 25% of households pre-pandemic didn't have active internet, I'm sure you're right. There's probably been a massive shift in that because they realize that if they don't leave their house and they don't have internet, then they are imprisoned in the four walls of their home, right? I grew up in a really small farm town. And for those that know me, like, I always say we had more cows than people. The truth is there's only 8,000 people in the entire town. Like there's just, like my driveway was a quarter mile off the road and it was a gravel road. Like it was cheap farm country that people bought land because it was a cheap way to start family. And it was the way it was. There's no fast food. There's one 7-Eleven, one blinking light, no stoplights. Like it was just that it was a small community. And, one of the things that you kind of realize is like, without internet, you're in the middle of nowhere. You're like, there's no resources, there's no exposure. And this is going to sound, what I'm about to say, if it's not interpreted properly, and if I don't say it right, it's going to sound like I'm being a prick. And I don't mean this way, but like they say that animals that interact with other animals are smarter, more socially adept animals, right? They're aware of more things because they have more experience. Without giving the opportunity for people to have those experiences, contact sport, touch different things, taste different things, experience different things, see different ways of living, right? Like it limits their ability to dream and think and interact. It limits their ability to have social flexibility in how they interact with different types of people, right? It becomes very, very challenging. And like, it's, I'll talk to certain friends back home and it's like, if they don't leave their house, they'll interact, they'll see 10 people in a week. I live outside of DC. I'll look outside and see 10 people in 4 seconds. My brother lives in New York City, in Brooklyn. Like this, he looks outside and sees hundreds of people the second he opens his curtain, right? It's just, there's a need. And in my mind, when you get rid of the access to internet, it's kind of like taking somebody from New York City and then putting them in the country. They can't even look out the window anymore and see what's happening around the world, right? Quick question on this. I know we started a little late. Do you have to jump in 5 it's 4 o'clock on our side?
I'm okay.
In a little bit?
No, I'm good. I'm good time.
You're good. Okay. I knew we started like 15 minutes late, so I didn't know if we'll go for another 15, 20 or so and tie up. But with that in mind, so thinking through, the more people are aware of the problem, the more there is a chance for people to get behind it, support it, donate, all of the different functions that grease the wheels of progress. How do we make people aware of something that is like you're showing a negative? It's showing the lack of something. Like, how do we do that to somebody that's watching this on an iPhone next to their laptop, connected to an HDMI cord to another monitor, right? Like, how do we help them understand that the gap is more significant than internet, right?
Yeah. Do you think that I sometimes, especially like, I don't know. I mean, this just ties to an overall, like my perspective of what technology is, and because this problem is a problem behind the scenes that the globe is facing. This is not what we're talking about. Yes, it's internet. Yes, it's access to a device, but it's also thereof, like looking at Africa, for example, Africa right now, 50% unemployed, right? What would people do to make money, right? It's the fact that the world as a whole, yes, we've now innovated and made everything quick, like fast, and we have all these awesome solutions to so many world problems. But the point is that in the midst of all of that, the problem that we're essentially talking about is having 100% human participation,
right,
of all citizens of any nation anywhere, right? Which means that people have to have a sense of purpose in their life, no matter where they live. And right now, if that sense of purpose is directly related to a computer and the internet, then that's what it is. And people need to stop looking at the fact that it's tech, because it's not tech. It's the fact that we created a cloud. It exists everywhere around us.
Right.
And we're forgetting that everyone now who does not have access to the basic technology that the world actually runs on, is left without any purpose in their life. Like, so if you're listening and you have a computer, have an iPhone, whatever, just understand that that is how you paint your life. That is how you create choices. That's how you define yourself, your individuality, who you look to connect to, even listening to the show. Like, everything in your life is related to your access. Now imagine you don't have that, and accept the fact that millions and millions and millions and millions of people all over the world don't. And they probably won't.
Right.
Right? Like, how?
Right. Changing 50% unemployment in Africa is not something that happens in 5 years.
Exactly.
Right? Like, these are long.
Yeah. But even here in the US, it's the fact that people need to think differently about tech. They need to think differently about a computer just like we did when, when all these, like when technology came into existence, and we need to start looking at it as not only a means of participation and creating money, but also it needs to start evolving into a way where it drives purpose for people. And it drives, and not like how we said in the beginning, relationships, right? Not just connecting online, because the more we get lost in the cloud, those of us who are very like in it, how are our relationships with our neighbors? How are our relationships with our own families? How are our relationships with everyone everywhere else, right? It also is not only creating a negative impact on people who don't have it, it's in some ways also shaping the way we connect. And a lot of this change and this awareness is so much more deeper than just devices, even though the devices already are vital, right? So being able to bring our support together for the kids and families who don't have access, and make sure that they have it, as well as understanding that our own part in how we use tech drives how it evolves. Like we have to individually want to not just scroll all day.
Right. There has to be another reason to interact with the device than escapism and social engagement. Right?
Yeah.
It's so I'd love to talk a little bit in the kind of closing like 15 or so on when you work, like we talked about this on our initial call, when you go to a school and you sit in that auditorium and you look at 300 kids and did they, and I think you'll know what I mean by this. And for those listening, we'll obviously unpack it and watch it. And do they understand what you're giving them? Like from a standpoint of like, do they see it as just like a computer and like social media? Like, do they understand what you're trying to provide them? Or does it take that next step from here's a tool and then you get involved on the purpose development and how to activate the potential of that relationship with technology? Like what happens in that auditorium when you're giving it and then transitioning from it being an idea to now it's a real thing that is changing the way they operate?
I think that's what I do is a tiny, just part. Like I give them a stepping stone. I'm like, here, you can now stand on something.
Right.
Like everything else is there at, like what you're saying is after that.
So you give them the tool.
Yeah.
How do we activate the potential behind the relationship so they see it as a productive, and that doesn't mean work, right? Productive means it's a good use of time, right? That could be escapism. It could be skill development. Like how do we help kids understand how to build a productive relationship with technology after you already drop it off?
So for the past 3 years, no, not 3, but that's where I started my software company, right? So I started building my own operating system and a database, not even a database. I pretty much took and this is kind of going left, but I took the infrastructure of how society operates across all these different federally registered occupations and all the stuff that exists online to curate what you want and what you want to create in your life. Right? So I can hand it to you, because you can't expect an individual or even a community, unless they've had pre-exposure on a professional level, to guide an individual sense of purpose and success through the cloud, unless they've already achieved it, which is where this, again, it goes back to Open Doors Challenge and creating champions. If you wanted to be a tech, I could teach you to be a tech, right? You can do that if you know your neighbors and your community, right? Could you go find the person at your church that is also a tech and have them teach you and guide you and mentor you? Yes.
Right. How
likely are you, so let's say, let's create an equal playing field. So I can freely, without doubt and fear, go and speak to anyone in my community, right? And ask them for guidance. How easily can you do that on the internet?
Yeah, I mean, you know how to do it. I mean, in a blink.
Yeah.
But it's back to that relationship. You see it as a place where you can go get help.
Yeah, but it's also not free. Okay. See, I'm going towards the in-person stuff that humans used to have.
I understand.
So much more real.
I
right?
understand. You want them to have a local ambassador, so to speak, to help, sustain the development and things like that, rather than feeling lost in the proverbial internet where they're just like moseying around lost, trying to find somebody to latch arms to.
Right? It's designed to consume. Like the internet is designed to consume you.
Right.
Like,
it's not designed to be the shepherd.
and all of a sudden, like create all this stuff, and like you're most likely going to spend hours and hours and hours getting consumed by it.
Right. So basically what it comes down to is, instead of being, going into the fabric of social and the internet, it's kind of like making sure they're in control of it. Like, don't passively get involved, because then it's just going to own your attention and you're not going to have the ability to use it as something to craft a potential better tomorrow. But if you have a local sponsor, an ambassador, somebody that can be kind of the shepherd in your journey with developing a healthy relationship with technology, then it becomes sustainable. Like, it becomes something that compounds, and that person then can, in their own right, become an ambassador, so to speak, and help the next person. It kind of tips the domino.
Yeah. And that was that vision. And it all circles back to that vision, because I've been I've been working on creating a sustainable solution to all of these things that we're talking about. And I've constantly been channeling them towards that ideology of the open doors challenge, which is using tech as the gateway. So here, now the doors are open.
Yep.
Getting to know the people that you need around in your community, being able to connect with them both in person as well as using technology, and then having them as your guides and or like mentors to be able to be successful, right? And those kinds of relationships have the highest potential to come into existence locally, which also fixes the whole problem of what technology has in some ways done to the world. Because I still can't get over going to restaurants and seeing everyone on their phone. Like, people just aren't present anymore.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's kind of, you need to create a balance almost. It's like food. Develop a healthy relationship with it, right? It may be something we need, we rely on. It's part of sustainability, but develop a healthy relationship with it. So what talk to us a little bit about what a post-COVID environment looks like for you and your team, and where your head's at a little bit, kind of as we start to close out. Like, obviously there's some things we just can't predict, we don't know, and we got to play it by ears. Hopefully you're able to come back to the States soon and get back in rhythm, I guess. I'm sure that's one of the top items you're working on. But what can we expect from what you're trying to do over the next couple of years as you drive forward with this initiative? Like, are you focusing on any parts of the country, any parts of the States, or is it you'll go anywhere and everywhere that's necessary to move the mission forward?
Right. So right now we're focusing, and we've done this for maybe the last year and a half. I've pretty much invested everything I have into it. Kind of went through that Elon Musk type of thing. I literally sold everything I had that I could and just invested into the software. And so it's called WOV instead of love, right? It's called WOV. So I wanted to create a software that facilitates the relationship and that support system that a family would give you, but it be a social network. So we've been working on a social network that essentially, like, it's a little bit complex, because when you download it, you have to go through a 60-question survey to identify what kind of inner champion you have. But then based on the output that it generates, which is an actually accredited, like, federally defined system. So the output that you get now helps you navigate your potential in the society that you live in. Not only that, but you can also, so if, like, I am a teacher, or I am a scientist, or I am an entertainer, like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, you can connect with other like-minded people in your area. Right. So the idea is to change the paradigm of how technology is affecting people, and we're right now beta testing the first edition of it. Okay. And over the next few months, my intention is to just give it out for free to all the kids, like as many student communities along with their parents, so we can facilitate that kind of that relationship building that we just talked about.
Kind of serves as their shepherd in their journey with technology.
Yeah.
That's
but for them, like, for one another, right? So yeah. I just want to create the choice. So if because a community should know that. I mean, it's just like you as a parent would want to know that if there's someone within your own community that could guide your children,
Yes.
or even be a mentor, that like you have that conversation.
It's kind of in many ways what,
Choice.
you know, in some ways it kind of feels like what many people do when they realize the wrong word, but how they interact with church. A pastor, a mentor. It's, you know, it's a faith-based infrastructure that's not religious, but it's self-belief, it's community belief.
Yeah.
It's learn about yourself to know what tomorrow can look like, and meet the other people who are also trying to do the same process. And in the process, you'll learn from people that are already a couple steps ahead, but are looking backwards, trying to pull people along with them, right? And so, because I know the reason I'm pointing this way, I got another monitor I'm looking through, like, you know, faith is clearly important in what you guys do, but it not in a religious sense. It's in a confidence, in a belief, it's in a mindset, you know, and it makes a lot of sense.
Because the way my family introduced, because faith in Slovakia back then, like you couldn't go to church, you couldn't go get married. So like the religious aspect of faith wasn't allowed. So I grew up in faith being like believing in yourself, believing in your family, doing what's right, treating everyone as family,
community,
you know, non-religiously, and that's always how it's rooted in me, and I've always wanted to extend that to as many people as possible.
Wow.
And that's where this whole shift towards software came in, because I could be giving, and we're still doing it. So 100%, if anyone knows a community or wants to participate in any way, Technology for the Future, 100% we'll always do anything we can to help.
Yeah.
Parallel to that, I recognize that a huge part of this problem is the way we navigate the cloud and the way we build our relationship with it. And that just like when, you know, like I look up to how Steve Jobs looked at technology, because it gives me a sense of validation that I'm not the only one who had that kind of relationship to it.
Right. The bicycle for the mind, you know, analogy of like, it gives people the infrastructure to dream in motion while creating that dream.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so how do people get involved? Both break it down for me on the individual level, on the corporate level, like how, you know, for people that look at this and say, I understand that this is a problem, and I, you know, how do they get involved? How do they in some way, shape, or form support this?
So on technologyforthefuture.org, we created a comprehensive form that allows people to build their relationship with us, whether they're a student, a company, a donor, or like pretty much anyone and everyone. And off of that system, we've been building other solutions that we're actively developing to be able to share and give back. So whether it's an organization, like organizations, it's not only just about having funding, but it's also about being able to have access to older broken technology that can get repaired and needed to kids, right?
Do you work, so and I'm reading through this a little, so you'll work with companies, for example, that maybe are upgrading their training laptops, and you'll, you know, either buy them or take, like, you know, I'm thinking about like you know, a large enterprise that, you know, they're sending out, you know, cheap old laptops that they don't need to be super robust, and they're not doing heavy computing on it, but it's just a means of basic functionality, and they update the newest version, and they have 10,000 laptops or 200 laptops. Do they sell them to you, or is it a donation that serves as a write-off from a material cost standpoint?
So it's both.
Got it.
And it depends, because a lot of what people also don't realize is a lot of technology that could be repurposed in the United States actually goes overseas. So other countries buy it up because they're willing to pay more for old and broken stuff. So then that affordable solution kind of like leaves the United States and goes somewhere else.
Got it. So if we understood.
We would focus, like even in my actual like company, I would always be like, you know, like get it to us so we can get it, so we can make sure that it goes to help like our home first, and then it can go overseas.
So do you have a break? So like, so I'll give you a specific example, right? So last year, myself and Robbie Martin, buddy of mine, what's up if you're checking it out, man? We started. We haven't incorporated it as a 501c3, but the Artists for Good collective. It was really just, you know, when COVID started, music stopped, comedy stopped, our creative forms of expression, you know, live scenario stopped. So we, you know, pulled together and realized, like, gallery season for artists wasn't happening. We got a lot of people to donate a lot of things. We held a 5 to 7 hour virtual festival that raised like $12,000 or something like that. It all went to fighting hunger and things. So we had the mental math of, it was like give or take, I think it was like, $3 and change created a meal. It was one of those things where it helped us understand, if we want to donate 1,000 meals, we need to hit a mark. Like, is there a way? Because I'd like to actually, I'll probably give Robbie a shout about this specifically. I'd like to if people raise money and sent you guys X amount, like, is there a way to find a way to equate like a contribution to a laptop or something?
Maximum 100. So that's what I've actually prided myself on. So while I've been piloting this for the past 3 years, actually on average per like the conversion of our entire operational budget for technology for the future divided by the number of kids we served, averaged out around $70 per student receiving a laptop.
Incredible.
That includes literally our operations, everything.
That's amazing.
Insane. So basically like getting a computer, getting it to the student, and that even includes warranty. So like we provide 1 year of support for the devices. We do under $100. So if you contribute $100, guaranteed a student gets a device.
Amazing.
I was even thinking about a campaign before. I was like, I wonder how we could get 1 million people to contribute $9 a month and give 1 million kids computers every single year, right? And not only that, but if we could get subscribers on this like $9 a month kind of pathway, then we could support the computers, and every student that's a member of our program would never be without one. So even if it breaks, they send it back, and we create enough of we budget it out to have enough of a little bit of a margin to cover damages and things like that too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, I've always been thinking about how can I create a support system for children that's sustainable, affordable, and just so different from what, is usually out there.
Of course.
As well as bridge that software aspect, so a student actually knows what they can do. So if they want to be a photographer, they open their computer and it shows up with all the tools that they need to edit photographs, where to sell them, how editing tips, that's what my software company is doing in stages.
So you're trying to get it to the point where the donation is also a one-to-one customized delivery, where it's not just here's a laptop, your internet connection works, and there's some basic office tools on there, but it's, hey, this is your future. You want to be a photographer, here's the technology and the resources based on what you provided us. That's
so we took
amazing.
We took 1,100 different jobs that exist in the US,
right?
Classified it into 74 dream areas.
Okay.
So now basically a student or family member can navigate to their dream, and the computer is the dream guide.
Right, it's the GPS, and they're the driver.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's what I've been doing everything I could. And some of my friends have been mad at me because, like I said earlier, they're like, get investors, but I just don't want to pollute it.
Totally.
Because I don't know whose money I could accept that would literally not want to all of a sudden, I want to make it sustainable and make money, but I'm not going to do it for profit.
No, you would need a silent partner, somebody that's like, hey, I need the cash, but you have no say in how we do things because I'm not wavering on what I'm doing. Yeah. And that's, it's feasible, but you're right. It's a different type of a relationship with the person delivering the capital. Look, Adrian, this is awesome. And thank you for taking some time. And I hope you're able to sort things out and get back to the States and get back in motion. For those that, let's kind of close things out here. Obviously, technologyforthefuture.org is where people can get information and learn more. If you want to donate, get involved. If you want to share, this is too important. And the one thing that for me, the one thing that stands out among all of what we're talking about is I think sometimes the world we live in it only has room to fight so many battles. In reality, that's not true, right? We have the capacity to fight as many things as possible, right? But sometimes it feels like COVID's the problem. Nothing else matters but COVID, right? There is international conflict. That's the only thing that matters today. And in reality, there's these micro opportunities like this on a day-to-day basis in each community that while these big issues are taking place, those issues don't go away, right? There's always going to be conflict. There's always going to be things happening. We hope for a better world, but this is one of those things that, it's like being in a Tesla on the highway next to somebody riding a bike. There's just no way to close the gap unless you get them a car. Right. And they need help. And I think this is something that absolutely needs more attention behind people realizing that, even if the 25% of households that don't have access to internet, it's, what are there, 10 to 20 million children every year that don't have access to technology? It's probably, and I think what people also need to probably recognize a little bit here is the domino effect of if that individual doesn't have the support, what happens when they have a family and they have children? And back to the point you touched on earlier with these economically depressed areas where the third grade reading level is the indication on, are they going to go to prison or are they going to be contributing members of society? And what a tough thing to take when you think about how black and white that perspective is, right? And so anything you want to close, before I close this out, anything that you top of mind, anything that you want to share, promote, I'll, more than take a minute or two to kind of unpack what's on your mind, my man.
I just want to, I've always wanted to have a community of people or build a community of people who understand that technology has to drive purpose, and irrelevant of the device, internet, anything else, there's, even those 25% households, there's still massive percentage of our population, even with technology, that don't have purpose because of it,
right,
or through it or whatever. And I think that, coming together and you giving us the opportunity and me the opportunity to share the story and what we've been doing, I think is important. And it's and I think it can be a huge step to being able to build something greater. Like, I know the resources and everything else is out there and I have access to it. I see it. It's just a matter of the fact that for something transformative to occur, it takes unique kind of people. Because not only is it like, it's hard to see when you don't see it, and when people don't see it, but also, you have to have it in your heart that you're willing to sacrifice and push for something greater and better in the world than just the things that are constantly in front of us.
You have to look at it as necessary. You have to look at it as necessary, not a distraction from your day-to-day.
Yeah.
And it's tough when everybody's, again, driving a Tesla and they're not really worried about, well, they're in the bike lane. It's like, some people didn't choose to ride a bike. It's just all they had. Yeah. Right. Adrian Martinson, thank you for joining. For everybody else, check out technologyforthefuture.org. If you're tuning in audio, thank you for sticking around. On the video side, thank you for showing some love. You guys know the deal. My name is Jeremy Francesi. This is First Floor Conversations, where the view at the top is only as good as the foundation which preserves it. And I think in this environment, in 2021, in this world, wherever you are in the world, technology absolutely is a driver for purpose. It's a driver for how we operate as a community, and it is the barrier to entry for participation in most environments. And the more people we can help, the more children we can help, the better the entire team of Team Human can be ultimately. And so, Adrian, thank you for taking some time. Everybody else, take care, and we'll be back for more. Hey everybody, my name is Jeremy Francesi. I'm the founder and president of Strategic Branding Studios, and I want to say thanks so much for stopping by and tuning into the video. If you enjoyed the content, remember to like, comment, and subscribe so you can stay tuned and stay informed on all new releases. If you're interested in learning about how SBS can help you and your organization take marketing and communications to the next level, visit us at strategicbrandingstudios.com for more.